family makes business challenging. I've had a handful of conversations with $1 million, $2 million businesses. And what we've generally found, and I think this is the key point here, what we've generally found is that...
I'm going to put you on the hot seat here because I've got to know, are you a pro, do as much business as you can with family, or no, most of the time it doesn't work out?
If somebody comes to the website, I don't want them to have any idea what we do. Is that a family business ends in one of two ways: a sale or a lawsuit.
All right, well, welcome back to the lounge. I have Don Woodard III here with me from Western Companies. And now, see, I'm already going to go off script, Donnie, because do you like Don Woodard III, or Donnie? We've got to get that straight to start.
That's a fair question. So there's a little bit of a nuanced answer, but the reality is that when I'm not with my dad, who's the president of Western, his name's Don Woodard Jr. When I'm not with him, I prefer to go by Don because I've always felt that Donnie is a very childish, young-sounding name, somebody who doesn't take anything seriously. Whereas Don sounds official. Donald's a little too far. Whereas, Donald's my legal name, I suppose, but I never go by that.
No, I didn't even think of Donald. That's now.
Well, so my name is Donald Morris Woodard III. But Donald's, it's too formal. Don, I think, has a right balance of formality and informality, but I'm wise enough to recognize that if I'm with my dad in an official business capacity, it's not helpful for somebody to have to be like, Don, no, that one.
Yeah.
So like when I'm around other people with my dad, I'll go by Donnie, but if I could choose, I would go by Don.
You'd go by Don. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to just make people call you Don on the show. So if someone sees you after the show, call him Don, if you would. Hey, I did some research, too, on your grandfather, who, God rest his soul, passed, not too long ago. You guys have an amazing family. And, I've had the opportunity to spend some time with your dad as well. It's a family business, but it seems like you're taking the company on a different path. Like you're actually putting the company out there, I think for the first time, maybe ever. You told me something when we were talking a while back, and I wrote it down so I didn't mess it up, but the largest M&A advisory firm you've never heard of. And I thought that was pretty cool because I hadn't heard of Western before I met you and your dad. And I've been in DFW a long time, but you seem to be the first person in the company to be pushing to get your name out there. Is that a fair statement? You guys have been kind of undercover for years.
Absolutely. So, Western's been in business for 27 years. My dad started it in 1998. And, for the first 25 or so years, my dad was adamant that we were going to fly under the radar, be very discreet, not tell anybody what we do. There's a concept in the finance world called a tombstone, which you put on your website, and it kind of talks about the deals you've done and who you advised and how big the deal was and who the buyer was. And my dad says we're just not going to do that. And we didn't even have a website until 2010. And when we decided to put together a website, he went to a web developer that he somehow knew, and he told the guy that, I want to have a website. I want it to look really good, but if somebody comes to the website, I don't want them to have any idea what we do. So that was kind of...
I could totally see your dad saying that, by the way.
That was his mindset for... it still is for the most part, but for the first probably 2 decades, that was his mindset, and it worked. It's appealing to a pretty good portion of our target market, but the problem we run into is that when you come across somebody who maybe is talking to other advisors or is a little more skeptical or has been conned before, it's hard to convince somebody that we are legitimate and serious and capable without some sort of physical presence, brand, identity. And so we hired a guy about 3 years ago named Turner Holthouse who was in the finance space in New York City, and he came down here with his family, and he and I have really worked to build a brand, build an identity, have people know who we are and what we're about and who we're for, who we're not for, and what makes us different, while still being true to what my dad believes is valuable in running a business and helping clients, which I agree with everything that all my dad's values, but I just want to talk about us a little bit more than he would prefer to.
Yeah.
If that makes
Yeah,
sense.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So don't feel bad if you've never heard of Western, because that was on purpose. But you're opening a new chapter here, turning a new page. So I want people to know about you guys. You mentioned that you don't go by the term investment bank. Like, what's the difference between investment bank and M&A advisory firm? Like, why are you picky, which I think you should be, especially in building a brand, about the words that you use, specifically investment bank versus M&A?
Sure. So I would say there's probably two distinctions that are important. Kind of the philosophical, psychological distinction is that a lot of the clients that Western works with, they are family-owned companies. They are in the southeastern, western part of the country. They are in small towns with kind of all the values that go along with that. They're very Main Street, to borrow kind of a popular term. And they are maybe skeptical of Wall Streeters. And so when they hear the term investment banker, I think they're sometimes inclined to develop kind of a negative perception of who you are as an individual and what you value compared to what they value in terms of advising them on selling a business. So for that reason, we prefer M&A advisor over investment bank. The technical distinction is that an M&A advisor does one thing. They advise on M&A transactions. They can be on the buy side or the sell side, but that's the only service they provide for the most part. They might do some consulting work, whereas an investment bank can do a pretty wide array of corporate finance consulting advisory work in terms of underwriting securities issuances, having a broker dealer and trading stocks, bonds, and other sorts of securities, wealth management, equity capital markets desk, and a debt capital markets desk, and it can get very sophisticated, risky, and just generally big. And that's when you read about investment banks and Wall Street firms in a newspaper, that's the type of stuff they're getting into. Big deals involving issuing securities and so forth. Whereas all we're doing is advising business owners, entrepreneurs, family-owned companies on finding the right buyer, or advising public companies, family offices, and private equity groups on finding the right acquisition. So the deals are big. We're not talking $5 million deals here, but we're just very focused on kind of one segment of the corporate finance space.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you have an investment bank that will do M&A advisory, but that's just potentially one little segment of what they do. Where you guys
more or less.
Okay. You mentioned something too recently, which I was surprised by, and I actually told my bank on the way up here. So B1 Bank. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
I can't say that I
am. Regional bank, public company, but regional bank out of Louisiana. That you guys have never, correct me if I'm wrong here, you've never helped a company sell their business that has sold previously. Is that right?
We've done about 170 deals, and what I say is the vast majority of them are first-time sellers. So I don't want to go so far as to say we've never helped a company sell twice for a second time, but for the most part, our target audience, our target market, our ideal client is the entrepreneur or the business owner that has a great thriving enterprise, has historically been completely against the idea of selling, but has come to a crossroads in his life and is now looking to find a partner, a buyer, however you want to label it, to kind of take the company to the next level, help the family de-risk, but perpetuate the legacy.
But your focus is not, we're private equity owned and we've sold 2 times and we're looking for the third sale. That's not your guy.
No. We focus on the guy who's never sold his business before, There a pretty good portion of the M&A space these days is PE groups selling portfolio companies to other PE groups, and there are M&A advisors, investment banks who do very well at getting those deals done. But that's just not the world we play in, nor do we really want to play in it, because it's hard for a group like us to add value in that scenario. PE groups are really good at bringing sophistication, structure to a portfolio company. And when they come to sell it, 3, 4, 5 years later, they typically know what they're doing in terms of how to market it, how to present the company, how to find the right buyer, how to run the auction process. And so they do hire investment banks, but there's a degree of sophistication there that limits our ability to add value and make people's lives better, which is what we're trying to do. Whereas a first-time seller, some of them are savvy enough to kind of conduct the whole process by themselves, but the vast majority of them obviously have never done that before and just don't have the requisite understanding of how to engage in that process. And that's where we can come in and really help them identify the right partner, help them take all of their accounting and financial information and put it in a nice presentation so that it makes sense to a buyer, help them assess if the buyer is going to be a good partner, and so on and so forth. And that helps us, or that helps them, I guess, come to a good outcome.
Well, see, B1, the reason I brought them up is they're going through this brand, say like a brand reposition. It's not that, but brand research. They brought on a new CMO, trying to figure out like, who are we as a bank? Who's our target market? And one of the things they identified, which is why I brought them up to you, was they found a niche or a focus in working with partner buyouts, people that are selling their business for the first time. So I do want to get you guys connected because there's so much alignment there. But there's an enormous need. I mean, just anytime you haven't done something before, having someone as a guide who's done it. But then when the stakes are really high, business is doing well, you've got any number of companies that could buy the business. Who do you sell to? And I remember, I'm not going to mention them by name, but someone we both know in this space, M&A advisory, investment banking, was telling a story about how a company sold or was looking to sell, and they ended up selling to a Chinese firm, not because there was any other alignment whatsoever. Then the Chinese firm was willing to pay like 5x.
That's money.
That's all it was. And they sold, and, regardless what your feelings are with China or Russia or any of these geopolitically, it's just that type of company that says, we don't care who buys us. If China or whomever buys us for 5 times, that's our guy. That's also not the type of seller that would be a good fit for Western.
Sure.
Right?
I would say that's an accurate classification of the ideal seller. There's several ways to market a business. There is what you're referring to, the broad auction process, where you go out to basically anybody and everybody who's a potential buyer of a particular business, and the ultimate buyer is the one who bids the most in the auction. There's several rounds, and it's a very transactional process, and it's appealing to some first time sellers. They just give me top dollar, and that's the only thing I'm really concerned about. The ideal Western client, the guy we really enjoy working with, obviously money is always important. I don't want to make it seem like I'm suggesting it's not, but the ideal Western client is the guy who comes in and goes, yes, get me fair value for this thing, but I don't want the name to change. The employee base needs to stay roughly the same. I don't want the culture to change. This is my legacy. This is my grandfather's legacy, whatever. I want it to be protected. The community, we are a big part of the community, and I don't want to see our back office, our HR staff, our accountants, our billing group, relocated to HQ in another state, and have this community lose 100, 200, 300 jobs, because then that's going to kind of rest on my conscience, and people are always going to remember that I caused damage to this community, to this economy. So if we get a guy who comes in and says all that, man, we really get excited, because that's where I think Western can do the most to help them. There's a lot of buyers out there. I think in a certain way that, if you're selling a company, you can probably find a pretty wide kind of audience, to potentially make the acquisition. We're skilled at kind of carving through all of that to take a list of maybe like 100 potential buyers and narrow it down to the 10 that are going to be the best, closest fit to what you're trying to achieve when you wake up one day and go, I want to sell my family's business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. You mentioned, and don't give away too many details here because I know a lot of this stuff's confidential, but you mentioned a company that came to you guys, was looking to sell, and I don't know if I would say that they were embarrassed, but there were certainly things they needed to fix in their business, like accounting department, whatever. Like, you're going to have people come to you, or maybe they're not coming to you. And this could, part of the value of the episode here is, even if you don't think everything's perfect, doesn't mean that your business can't sell,
Sure.
or that you can't engage with someone that will help out. But you guys, you're giving me this example of like good business, but they've got maybe a messy accounting department. They don't think they're ready. They got to clean this up first. You like projects like that. Like, you like to get your hands dirty and help them get ready to sell. Is that fair?
Yeah, I'll preface what I'm about to say by saying that the vast majority of the people Western's worked with, whether they're clients or not, just by virtue of having a business and growing it to the size that many of them are very talented, savvy individuals. And the only problem that they typically have is that in the process of building this thriving enterprise, they overlook or just plain forget about kind of the back office structure, the administrative structure. So we have seen 30, 40, 50, 60, up to $100 million companies with some of the worst accounting you could imagine. And I'm not trying to be harsh or critical when I say that. It's just, they're still on QuickBooks, for example. They're running a $70 million construction company off QuickBooks. We just fundamentally can't do that past a certain size, because construction comes with a number of accounting nuances that QuickBooks is not set up for. So we'll come in and help them, transition to a ERP, a more advanced accounting system that can help them account for all the contracts and projects they have. Retail, we do a lot in retail, and inventory. Tracking inventory is often a challenge because the business just got so big so fast that kind of the textbook stuff you'd read about in terms of tracking inventory and doing inventory counts and putting in barcode systems and whatnot, they just haven't gotten to it yet. Unfortunately, if you do want to sell, buyers are going to be looking for structure. They're going to be looking for the accounting to be familiar to them. And so on day one, a lot of the people we work with, you just can't take their information, put it in a book, and put it in front of a buyer, because it's just going to raise a ton of questions. So we spend 6 months, honestly, on average, helping them kind of build up to the level of sophistication that you would need to execute an M&A transaction. And the kind of the valuable outcome of that is, even in those scenarios where the business owner decides, you know what, I thought about this, I don't want to do it, he still walks away with kind of a valuable output by virtue of working with us, because he's caught up to some degree in terms of, does he have the right leadership in place? He's hired a CFO rather than just using a bookkeeper or a accountant to do all his work for him. He's transitioned to a more sophisticated accounting system. He's hired a COO to help them oversee field work, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. I've always wrestled with this, Donnie. And I'm not trying to sell my business, but I'm thinking, like, if I ever wanted to one day, I've gotten advice both ways. One is, you need to make yourself, CEO, founder, like, irrelevant to the business. You need to be fireable or, dispensable. Um, Take yourself out of the business because they're not, unless you want to stay with it, they're not buying you. They're buying this business and this system that has to move on without you. I've gotten that advice.
Mm-hmm.
I've also gotten the advice of do what makes the business successful. If that's you being the face or you doing certain things in the business other people can't do, or you can do them better than everybody else, lean into that and be that guy or be that woman.
Sure.
And, at some point, if the business sells, then maybe you can play a small role, or at that time, then address business continuity or transition. Like, what have you seen in that aspect? And like, how would you advise someone that's said, hey, I built this $50 million company and I think most of it's because me in this particular role?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll say is a little bit of a cop out. It depends, which I know nobody likes
Yeah.
to hear. But I do think it's a bit of both pieces of advice you've received. What we generally tell people is you should always run your business like you're never going to sell it. Even if you are in the process of selling it, you gotta run it with the long term in mind, right? For you, the deal may fall apart, or you may change your mind, decide not to sell it. So you should never start making decisions like, I only have 6 more months involved in this business and then I'll be out of it completely. It's a recipe for disaster for any number of reasons. But it's also fair to say that if a buyer looks at your business and realizes that you are the business, that makes it that could potentially make it unattractive to them because there's a pretty significant degree of key man risk. Obviously that kind of mindset will be affected by what your plans are post-closing. If you're going to walk away completely and you're the business, right? Nobody's going to want to buy it. But if you're planning to stick around and you're the business, people will probably be more likely to have that conversation with you about, all right, I'll be willing to make that acquisition, but I want to make sure I understand how involved you plan to be post-closing. It can never hurt to bring in support to your company. If you started the company and you're the sole decision maker and you're running 95% of the business, even if you don't plan on selling it, you can only make the business more valuable for the long term if you bring in a CFO to help you manage the accounting. You bring in a chief operating officer that allows you to basically have 2 eyes in the field in terms of bidding contracts or buying merchandise or whatever, business you're in. You don't want to overdo it. A $30 million business doesn't need to have just a ton of mid-level managers. You don't need to have a massive C-suite. A lot of the C titles are kind of pointless, but you can't hurt yourself if you bring in support.
Yeah. I mean, a buyer needs to see a team.
A buyer will want to see a team, yes.
Right?
A buyer will absolutely want to see a team. But I think the other piece of advice you said is just keep going at it because you're having fun or whatever, and that's also generally pretty good advice. You don't need to go out of your way to like make yourself fireable. Honestly, I don't even really know how you do that. Because Western's a family-owned business, and Lord knows Dad's very involved, and I'm very involved. I can see how we can make ourselves less involved by delegating responsibilities, but at the same time, you don't just need to be like completely hands off because then you're not doing the thing you enjoy doing anymore. So it's find that balance between making your business sellable / valuable in the long term by bringing in that structure, while also not making yourself so redundant that you wake up one day and realize that, wow, I'm just not doing anything anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. With the intention of just
exactly,
be sellable
mm-hmm.
as a business.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. You're a young guy, relatively speaking.
I am fairly young.
Younger than me.
Yes.
And when I met you several years ago, you're even younger. I was really surprised at how young you were and how active you were in the business and how knowledgeable you were in this space. And you've continued to learn and grow. But, I mean, you live and breathe and eat what you do. Like, it's clear that you love what you do.
I have a good time, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you just love it. I can tell. When did you know that this was it? Like, were you 2 years old and you knew you were going to be in the family business?
Well, I mean, I can't tell you that there is a specific point in time. I'm 23, and which is very young. It's, I mean, I would be just out of college and in a normal
Zero college.
zero college. Yeah, didn't go to college, but so in a normal world, I'd be 1 year out of college. But I've been at Western for 7 years now, and what happened was, I played hockey growing up, and so I did online school so I could travel to play hockey, and then the hockey kind of petered out for a number of reasons, and Dad suggested I come intern at Western, and interning at Western very quickly became just working at Western.
This was 16 years old,
Yeah,
give or
16
take?
or 17.
Okay.
My first day was when Texas Tech played Virginia in the national championship game in basketball, which I think was 2019, and we're in 25 now. So 6 years, 7 years, I don't really know. But I had the opportunity to go to TCU for college, and I was just having a lot of fun traveling around with my dad and working with business owners and all the related activities that go along with that, that I decided to pass up on TCU. And I've been at Western since then, and I really enjoy, as I think most of my colleagues do, traveling throughout this great country, interacting with these talented business people, learning about kind of what makes them tick, meeting their families, meeting their team, their employees, learning about their culture, and honestly learning about industry and business, right? Western is kind of a generalist firm. We don't have a niche. I mean, we do have a niche, but we prefer not to have a niche. We do a lot of construction just because there's a lot of activity there, but we'll take on anything. And as a result of that, in a span of a month, the average Western vice president or whatever average title you want to apply to that, the average Western individual is going to be working on a retail deal, a construction deal, a distribution deal, and maybe a random industry deal in the space of 14 days. And so you learn a lot about how the world works when you're kind of working with all these companies in these random industries. You learn how this country was built. You learn how new technologies are developed. You learn about accounting principles and law. And then you learn a lot about psychology, because when you are working with a family business owner, there is a very heavy element of psychology involved. And you kind of get like a front row seat into how decisions are made, and conflicting objectives are rationalized, and just kind of how the human brain works.
Yeah.
So it's a very stimulating experience to be at Western. And I would say that, if you come in right out of college, start working at Western as an analyst, you will learn more in the first year than you'll learn in 4 years in college.
I sent an intern over to you, and he had an amazing experience.
Yeah, I really
validate that.
I would say you'll walk away feeling fulfilled professionally, but also like, wow, I learned a lot about how data centers are built. I learned how power lines are built. I learned how retail chains acquire inventory, get it to all their stores, and then sell it, right? I learned about how bumpers are made for cars, and so on and so forth. I mean, we've touched a lot of different stuff. And what's really cool, the clients we have are generally very free and open about teaching us how their industry works and how their business, and I don't mean from an M&A perspective, I mean like getting down to the very nuanced pieces of their business and the products that they make, walking us through like an industrial transformer. We've worked on we've worked with companies that manufacture transformers for the utility space, and the people we work with will walk them through their plants, and we'll sit there for 20, 30 minutes, and he'll show us every piece of these big huge transformers. And those things are marvelous, and it's amazing what they can do.
Well, they're passionate about what they do,
Yeah.
right? They built a big business for a reason. They
Hmm.
probably know more and they're more passionate than their competitors.
Sure.
And so you get to be the beneficiary of that. I'm going to put you on the hot seat here because I've got to know. Um, and you can't answer, you have to remove all your biases here. You work with dad, you're a family owned business,
Hmm.
but you have to choose one or the other. If someone comes to you and says, I got this great business opportunity and I could go into business with my brother or fill in family member name or not, are you a pro, do as much business as you can with family, or a no, most of the time it doesn't work out? I'm going to force you down one of those
That's
paths.
a really good question.
Because you've seen the ugly. There's no doubt about it. Like, people are selling their business because the family thing's not working out.
Yeah, for sure. So my dad has a saying, which might be a little extreme, but I would think the evidence would support it, is that a family business ends in one of two ways: a sale or a lawsuit. And really what he's driving at there is when you get into the second, that's probably too soon, the third or fourth generation, and that family tree starts to really split and everyone's piling into this business, it is impossible for everybody to be happy, right? Because there's only so many leading roles, there's only so many responsibilities, and then the more people that get involved, the more the objectives start to split. That is where the problems start to happen, especially when, an older brother is in charge, but his younger brother feels that he's more capable of running the business, and they start to clash. And then maybe there's a sister who is agnostic, but also is kind of happy with her distribution or whatever. And, it just gets messy. And then you got the older generation who is unhappy with a decision you made, how you're presenting the company and acquisition that you decided to go do. So it can make it, family makes business challenging. It can also make it very fulfilling, but it's hard. To answer your question, I would say if you're in your second generation, you decide to go work with your dad or mom, that is probably, I think the odds are likely that will work out, at least, for the first 10, 20 years. I think what I would suggest you avoid is getting into a business that's in its fourth generation, and at that point there's brothers and sisters and cousins and all sorts of people kind of involved in and the shares are distributed very widely throughout the company, and nobody really has true authority, and you've got a structure where decisions have to be made unanimously, and nobody has more than 5% of the equity. I think that is probably you're gonna get in there and very, very quickly realize, like, wow, this is intense.
When you have some people that are extremely operationally involved and know the business really well, and then others that know very little to nothing, right? But they
Yeah.
have a vote.
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with 2 family members. We worked with 40 family members.
Oh my gosh.
And obviously everything in between there. I think the businesses that do really well are where it's a father and a son and then a son, and they just kind of naturally kind of hand it down. Once you have a brother and a sister, and there's multiple kind of, trying to think of the right term here, but the more the tree starts to branch,
Yeah.
the more complicated it becomes. And so I would say it's an extreme. When you're in a family business, you're either going to think, man, this is great, I'm having so much fun, this is the best idea ever, or you're going to think, wow, this is terrible. And I think the pendulum can swing very quickly there. There's not going to be like a natural progression from this is great to this is terrible. It's Monday, this is great. Then Monday night something happens, and Tuesday you're like, man, I need to get out of this situation. I think that's probably the dynamic that you'll experience working with a family business. And we like I said, we work almost exclusively with companies that look like that.
Are you coming in to save the day in many cases where they're like,
I don't want to go that far, but
it's untenable. You run into untenable family situations. They built a big business together, and they're like, the only solution here, the best solutions to sell. That's
probably
coming to Western.
I say the easiest solution is to sell. I mean, I would I don't want to be too harsh about the family business because that is what has built our country. That's what Western is. That's where our clients are. And I don't want to make it seem like our clients are all just at each other's throats trying to kill each other because they're absolutely not. My point is just the more the family the more family that get involved in a company, the harder it becomes to make decisions
Yeah.
and to grow it and to sustain it for the long term. And that's where when you decide, oh, okay, I want to sell it, usually the driving factor for that is a key family member got sick, and that made the rest of the family realize, like, okay, let's find someone to help us out with this thing. Or lack of succession plan. The third generation realizes the fourth generation wants nothing to do with it. Or family strife. Just the disagreements, the arguments just became so intense that they decided, for the sake of their family, it's time to make a move. So no, I wouldn't say we're always coming in to save the day. There's an element of that. It just kind of depends on what's driving the sale decision. There's probably 10 or 15 what we call catalysts behind the decision to sell. And I think that catalyst impacts kind of the role we're playing psychologically in the course of helping a family sell their company.
You guys have value that you can provide to these family-owned businesses that a traditional investment bank or a big corporation can't provide,
It's easier
can't
for us to
relate to.
relate.
You're like, hey,
Yeah.
look at us. Right, we get it.
Yeah.
We understand the dynamics. We work with people like you all the time. We are people
Yep.
like you, right? So, I can see that as a huge advantage.
It is it's an advantage for sure. Um, I think it's easier for us to help guide our clients to a amicable solution when we are able to put ourselves in their shoes. It's easier for us to understand their problems and what's driving their decision making when we've probably had those discussions ourselves, right? Um, Kind of the bigger guys, a lot of them just don't have that because they didn't work with their family. They went to school, they got an MBA, and then they went to go work in finance, right? And so they have like the technical knowledge, but I feel like some of them lack the interpersonal knowledge, the psychological knowledge
Mm-hmm.
to really understand, okay, my client is telling me this. Why does he seem so adamant on wanting to do it this way? Oh, well, it's because he really loves his brothers and he has enjoyed working with them, but it's just become so complicated that he's starting to like split from them both professionally and personally, and he wants a transaction that can allow him to reconcile those professional differences and get back to the close personal relationship they had when they were younger.
That takes a lot of empathy. Like I've met a million investment bankers, M&A advisory people, just in my years in business. And the thing about you and your dad, from the first time I met you guys, like we're sitting in the room and your dad just wants to know about our business. Like I just tell me about your business. I want to know about it, and learn. Like you said, you love learning. Um, there's a lot of empathy, like I've seen Western have. Like
Mm-hmm.
most of the M&A and investment banker guys, it's a guy that's trying to sell a business to make money, and they may be working with a seller that's just trying to sell a business and make money, and they're probably a perfect match made in heaven, right? They're both like, hey, let's max this sale out, and I started this business to sell it, and I'm 2 or 3 years later and we're going to flip it. um then you guys come in, you're like, why do you feel that way? What's driving that decision? Like, you understand these family dynamics. um that's not very common in this industry. I can just tell you, outside looking in, like I haven't met too many empathetic, understanding, question asking, like get down to the bottom of it. It's either can we get a deal done or not,
Yeah,
and if not, let's move on to the next one.
I would say there's an element of truth to that. I think Western is first and foremost a relationship business, and our number one objective is to help make a business owner's life better in some form. I would say if we talk to 100 people in a year, we're not going to do deals with the vast majority of those people, maybe ever, because a lot of them are just not interested in doing anything. In those cases, we still try to add value and make their lives better by drawing on all of the 25 years of experience and 160 deals we've done, drawing on all that experience working with other families to helping them solve some problem they're having in their life, even if it doesn't involve a transaction of some type. We just want to provide valuable information, guidance, be a sounding board, something that the business owner walks away from that relationship, or I guess from a meeting with us and goes, "Wow, that was what they did. That insight they gave me was helpful. I can use that to make my company better, stronger, last longer, etc." If a M&A deal comes out of one of our relationships, obviously great, right? But I think what we really enjoy more than anything else is being what we call a pathfinder. Tell me about yourself. Where are you at in your life? Where's your business at? What pain points do you have? Then we take that and we kind of sit on it for a minute. We think, okay, what do we know that we can use to help that individual or individuals solve that pain point? If it's a transaction, great. But a lot of times it's just advice or an introduction to somebody, or just being an outlet.
Mm-hmm.
It can the goal is to provide value to make people's lives better. That manifests itself in a lot of different ways in the course of the relationship.
Yeah.
And the other thing we really try to achieve is what does our relationship with that individual look like post closing after we do a deal. And I say we do a really good job of maintaining those relationships post closing. It's not like, all right, you sold your business, bye, right? We try to keep them as part of our family in the years afterwards. We have a client who sent his daughter to come work for us. We helped a guy out in North Carolina sell his business, and I've probably gone to see him 4 times since then. We enjoy that part, even though the transaction's already happened. We enjoy staying involved in their lives and continuing to help them solve their problems in the years after a deal.
Mm-hmm. Good segue, because before we wrap up here, I want our members to be able to reach out to you guys if there's a fit. And we haven't talked specifically about what's in the box and what's out of the box, when you guys are a good fit and when you're not. There's some revenue, I wouldn't call them revenue requirements, but there's a point if you're not above that revenue, you guys provide white glove. Like, it just doesn't make sense. So talk about like what's inside the box, outside the box. Don't contact Western for an acquisition. Contact Donnie to be friends, right? You'll take a meeting or whatever, but what types of companies shouldn't contact you?
Sure.
And then what's the sweet spot? I know you guys do a lot, but like, what do you want more of? If you could speak to our audience and say, if this is you should probably consider just having a conversation with us.
Yeah. So I think that's, of all the questions you could ask me about Western, that's probably the most difficult one. The box changes from person to person at Western. I would say the overarching answer is we'll talk to anybody, which is really, really the truth. I can't say we value the relationship if I'm not willing to have a relationship with anybody who's looking for something like that. The reality, though, is that for Western to be successful and provide the level of service that we feel is necessary to conduct a successful transaction and to help a business owner find the right home, we do a lot of work. We have 4 or 5 CPAs on staff. We get really involved in the accounting to a degree that I don't think a lot of our peers do. We've rebuilt entire accounting systems before. Like I said, we've helped do accounting system transitions. We get in the weeds, probably to an extent that we really don't need to, but we do it because we enjoy being helpful, and we have fun working on problems. So that all that to say, we really try to avoid deals that are less than $20 million.
Is this
And
enterprise value or revenue?
yeah, enterprise
Okay.
value, and it depends on the industry. But if you just assume a one times revenue multiple, then it's 20 million in revenue. But the multiples are irrelevant for this discussion. $20 million is probably the smallest deal that we can get involved in and still provide the level of service that you deserve. Economically speaking, if you got a $5 million deal, man, we really wish we could help you, but it's hard for us to do that. But the good thing is we've developed a pretty large roster of contacts that are set up better to help those smaller businesses find good homes. And then we top out at about probably 2 billion or so. Anything bigger than that, and that's where you start to get into the investment banking world where you're issuing securities.
You guys did and I don't know if you want to put it out there, but near that,
Yeah, I
you've
mean,
done anything from,
we've come close to that
yeah.
once or twice, and we'll probably come close to that again sometime soon. There's some nuance there that you know is best saved for another discussion, but I would say our average deal is about 75, 80 million. But again, we'll talk to anybody. We strive to be helpful. Um, you put in your email signature at your service, and
Hmm.
that's I think really Western is we want to help families with their businesses because they worked hard to get to the point where they're at, and we would hate to see a family business get destroyed because of a lack of planning or a lack of thoughtfulness when it comes to transitioning to the next ownership group. Um, but we also we try to be realistic when we are talking to a client because our reputation, our word is very important to us. And if we tell somebody, yeah, we can sell your business, we want to be fairly confident that we can sell it and sell it for the value that we quote them,
Hmm.
right? And when you're just working, when you get below a certain floor, it's just hard for us to get as involved and have it make sense economically for us.
I gave you the example a while back, which is very crude and not a great analogy, but it's the guy that calls the gents place and says, "I love everything about it. I love the
Yeah.
bar and all this, but I don't want my hair shampooed. I don't want it conditioned. I don't want a steam towel, and I want it to be $20 instead of 50 or 60." We're just like, we can't. We would like violate everything that we believe in to not provide the quote full service.
Sure.
So I think about that with you guys. Like, we'd love to work with you. We'll refer you out. Maybe you saw that business come back to us, but like, we can't provide a low amount of service to keep the price low to justify trying to sell that. It goes against your entire ethos.
Yeah. I mean, Western is for the most part a success based firm, which just means that you pay us when we get a deal done. I've had a handful of conversations with 1 million, $2 million businesses. And what we've generally found, and I think this is the key point here, what we've generally found is that small deals and large deals both take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And when we're a success based firm and it's a $1 million transaction, it typically takes us as much time to get done as a $50 million transaction. And we still have to, staff the deal, have analysts and associates and a deal lead, and those people have families and they have to get paid for their hard work just like you pay your employees for their hard work. And so just small deals, it's hard for us to provide that high level of service we want to and have it not be a losing proposition
Yeah.
for us,
Yeah.
which I would say that I think our whole team would love to be able to help every single business that comes through the door, but some deals are just too small at the moment. Other people they just want to do the auction. And I mean, we do the auction, but it's not as fulfilling for us, I would say. We do like the guy who has other objectives, protect my legacy, protect my name. So if you just want to do the auction, I think that let's talk. But we might find a better advisor for you. If you're owned by a PE group, That's a different ball game. If you're an ESOP, that's a different ball game. If you're a public company, obviously that's a different ball game.
Real estate, you're not doing
We don't do a
100%
whole
real
lot of real
estate.
estate. No, our target market is the family-owned business or otherwise intimately held. And I qualify it because there are some businesses that I look at and say that's family-owned that I don't think view themselves as family-owned. So like if you and I went and started a company together, we're not family, right? But it's the same thing
Yeah.
a cultural standpoint. It's intimately held. It's not public. It's not owned by a PE group, right? It's not a huge engineering type shareholder, big shareholder based company where there's 150 shareholders. It's you and me who have built a great business, right? That's interesting to us. So it's the privately held, it's the family owned, it's the intimately controlled business in almost any industry. That is our target market because that is the type of people we relate to. That is the type of people that our firm is set up to help. And frankly, that's where we have the most fun and where we can provide the most value.
I love it. I feel like I need to go out. I'm excited to go out and find a business you guys can sell. So that'll be my homework for you, Donnie.
Yeah, and I'd say that if I know the vast majority of the people who are going to watch this aren't necessarily business owners, but if you happen to know somebody who could really benefit from knowing Western and who we could come in and make their life better, make the introduction. Western typically pays a pretty nice referral fee when we get a deal done. And what I can promise somebody who makes an introduction to us is that we're going to do everything we can to, treat that referee, I think that's the right term, great, so that you don't look bad for having made that introduction in the first
Well,
place.
I can attest to that. In wrapping up here, I've enjoyed getting to know you and your dad. Like I said, from the time that Lauren and I met you guys, felt like we were cut from the same cloth. We felt very welcome, very at home. You have an incredible reputation. So I know that if I refer someone to you, you're going to make me look good, even if the deal's a $200,000 deal or a $200 million deal, that you'll treat them fairly and make sure that they get the help that they need.
Yeah, and if the deal is small, like even if we can't like do like the all of the work we would do to get a deal done for a small business, a truly small business, we're still going to treat them with respect and help them find the right solution. I mean, when I qualify or when I kind of draw out our box a minute ago, it's not one of those things where it's like the people who are in the box are going to be my best friends and the people out of the box are going to be treated like non-entities. I'll help everybody. I'll talk to everybody. I just might find kind of a different route for you to go down, short of engaging Western in a full M&A process.
Yeah, makes sense. Donnie, it's been awesome, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Good to dive in deep. We've talked a lot over the years, but good to dive in deep and share this with our members. So guys, until next time, hope you enjoyed the show here, but we'll see you on the lounge on the next episode. Don, thanks again.
Yeah, thank you.